Okay. I am recording. And let me actually pull up the map. Sorry, I haven't done this ahead of time. I'm realizing that, okay, I think this is it. I have too many documents for Basin. I have to consolidate again. Let's see here. By the way, Bob, thank you for that article and throwing in our diagram for your research flow work.
Yeah, it was a nice diagram. I liked it.
Thanks. Yeah, I feel like this one now is I think we're starting to dive into your next article, aren't we?
Well, I'm going to take a side trip to there's a guy named Ron Eglash who has been doing something where he's trying to separate on the diagram what's the good stuff from a human common standpoint versus what's the bad stuff for going into capitalism and greed and all that kind of stuff. And so you can and see like where they map, because it's like where they meet, because it's like almost any kind of economic network that is happening now has to meet up with capitalism somewheres on the edges. You either have to you need money to buy things, you need to make money somehow in some kind of a market. So there's these compromises over what you would actually want to do that are sort of necessary. So he's looking at where do those boundaries come in, and so like Alessandro has got a little bit of that in his diagrams too. And so like I'd be looking today for some a little bit more explanation of all those diagrams while I'm thinking about how to write a blog post about them.
Great. Love those questions. I've actually started to bring in the blue from these diagrams into my next diagrams. These are some diagrams I'm making for impact bioenergy. Yeah, I think the name, I think I've been going with Holo Ag. I don't know what you guys think, but so far that's kind of what's going on. I don't know if that's what this is. I have no clue. But
your pick.
What's that?
Your pick. Sorry.
our pick. So what I was going to do is I was going to kind of zoom in a bit and just kind of see how I read this, and then get your thoughts, and just because it's a pretty complex drawing, and then see if my math is right. I added a few things, and yeah, we can add things. I can edit anything here. Well, I can't edit the underlying drawing though. I don't have that ability yet.
Yeah, I'm interested in what you and Kiki have plotted together and thought about.
Well, it was very mainly conceptual, I think, with what we were discussing. It wasn't really technical. I think it was more kind of like finding the model to kind of understand this map. And I think that we did speak briefly about the viable systems model and how this kind of could link in, this framework could link into the recursive systems kind of fractal kind of nature of the viable systems model, where you have like the internal operations, which could be the one that we're looking at right now, the gray bits.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. The gray bits of the canvas where you can see like the specific details and like functionalities of Basin and CCHAM. Like maybe those might represent the operations within the system, like the layered system. And then because with the viable systems model, you have like 5 different layers. So I kind of made an assumption that this could also in a way be applied to this canvas in a way, like with like I think if you go up towards the diagram, I think it was the viable systems model diagram, you had the operation, which would be system 1, and then you had the management of the system and the coordination of that, and then above all that you had the planning and the policy, which is to do with interfacing with the external environment and kind of adapting and making sure that the organization or the community adapts to the environment. So that's the kind of like identity side, the systems 5, which is like the outermost layer that interacts with the environment. So it kind of looks like the canvas seems like it could link into this model. Just kind of seeing the links a little bit, and it looks like that the outside bit of the canvas seems to be the one that's kind of the disruptors, and like what we're disrupting, which would be the seed monopolies and the fertilizer monopolies. So that's kind of like what we briefly discussed last time, and we did talk about, what else did we talk about?
We talked about
shared marketplaces.
Mm-hmm.
The shared marketplaces, like being the kind of maybe the reference and the main standard for all these different communities using platforms like Basin or SeedShare, and then those would basically kind of link towards this main kind of control center, which would be the shared marketplace. So that's the kind of like that's the kind of model that I see emerging with what could be HILO as a shared marketplace for communities. But then it kind of like maybe forks off into like a separate, more kind of customized app with Basin or SeedShare for communities. I don't know. That's kind of what we thought. I don't. What do you think?
Well, one idea that I was looking at was, how could we take the patterns that we see in HILO? I mean, this is pretty, I know this is not exactly what you all are looking to do with HoloREA and what options you have, but the general idea is there. My big question was how does communities fit in? And this is one of maybe environments as well. So you could have Holo Ag. This could be, let's say it's a seed. We could say SeedShare, as a community that you would post in potentially. So this is an idea that I'm currently trying to grok. Is this the correct pattern? So that's kind of where I am with why I'm kind of just looking at, oops, sorry.
Yeah, it seems like you're trying to find a way to kind of link the kind of fragments in a way, like just trying to like piece them together, the different apps in. Right,
exactly. And if this is Holo Ag, maybe this is the network level, and maybe SeedShare and Basin would be the community level, and that's how HILO works. Does anyone not know how HILO works? Should I show that real quick to see, or is everyone clear?
I know.
Yeah, I'm quite clear.
More or less how it works.
Okay.
Yeah, Bob and I were involved in the old HILO, so we know well how that one works, and this one is more just like, have caught a few snapshots, screens and stuff. So it's good enough, probably.
Great.
Although I am interested at some point, doesn't have to be now, on you've referenced like patterns in Hilo that you're attracted to. So I'm interested in what those are.
Yeah, and I'll show that. Let's see. I wonder if I have that in Hilo itself. I think so. In our Hilo page, you have the wider network level, which is kind of it's what is all the communities are nested within that. And then with each community, you then have like projects and events and all the members in that specific community. But the network level contains everything, the whole network, all the communities. So for us, we have one community deleting, but we have 3 basic communities within our larger network, and they all show up at the network level. So that's the pattern, right? So in our case for HoloAg or whatever we're calling it, HoloAg would be the network level, and then Basin, SeedShare, Shiro, would be pieces of that, and they could all connect, similar to your network diagrams. So I think if we went to the network level, I don't know if that's on here.
Question, Kamal, on what you just said. When you say Basin and SeedShare and HoloAg and whatever, are you thinking about apps, or are you thinking about, the Seattle community for sharing seeds and the Seattle community for, digester circular economy? And
I'm talking about this level of application, where we'll need to apply these different abilities to track and applying Holo REA and being able to buy and sell and trade, and so definitely this, once you get into this level of for sale and that level of detail, and even tracking, then I think we need to move towards applications. I don't know exactly, but I think this is something that Bob said earlier, and I think we've been saying, is that there seems to be a need for a social layer, which seems that Hilo does a really great job at, and then there needs to be a marketplace, which is much more robust and much more, this is when your tax dollars apply, all the real laws are starting to kick in here,
Yeah, this is, I guess, what we're here to kind of explore. This just how it all kind of like fits in together.
Right. And I will just give you an idea of how I was reading this. So so here we have like government. I want to call it participatory government. That's what I'm adding to it. Looking at like tax breaks given to what we can do with HoloFood, and then in exchange, we're giving a sort of decentralized, open, regenerative economy that can save the government money, potentially, by making it more efficient, etc., making it more local. HoloFood in this case splits off into SeedShare and Basin, very mirrored in its functionality. Since I've been looking at Basin, I'm just going to look at that. But this is what I'm trying to understand, is like, what is a digital repository of materials and transaction, and what's the difference between that and tracking and accounting functionality? So that's something I'm looking. Did we lose Lynn?
Yeah, I think this part is like very interesting, and I would like to know like what they really are, like what these really mean, what all these what he's done here. I think we kind of need him to explain.
Right. I'm just making sure that Lynn can come back in here.
I can make a stab at what it might mean.
Okay, go for it.
That would be great.
So So in HoloREA, you're going to have records of economic events and involving economic resources. And so all of those records would be in that, oops, you lost the diagram that you had on there. So all of those records would be in the digital repository of transactions, and also every economic event will be in there. So from the economic events, then HoloREA is able to take from one event and say, okay, here we have we consumed we have the farm and it consumed some liquid fertilizer. Okay, where did that liquid fertilizer came from? Okay, it came from this biodigester. So what went into that biodigester batch? And it came from the tofu factory, and it was brought by this truck. And so you can go from the tofu factory. You say, okay, well, it's like it's and then who used it, and so you can track all that stuff. And that's the tracking function. And so this comes up in your possible experience where you see these situations where they find some harmful bacteria in, what was it recently, was some vegetable, okay? And so they had to track it back for this was making people sick. So they have to track back to where did that come from? Where did it come from before that? And they track it all the way back to the field where it was grown, and you find that they were using some raw manure on that field. And so, or you had Tylenol for once, there was tainted Tylenol, and so they had to track that back all the way for everything, not only back to where all of that stuff came from, but then from that situation where every place else where it went. And so they had to take all that stuff off of the shelves, and so it was called a recall. So all of those things are about tracking. That's and so whether we might, in this kind of case, I have this situation now where I have these lovely seeds, and I want to go ask to the people I got them from is this couple in North Dakota where I came from, and I've mentioned those before. They're Hidatsa shield bean seeds, and they're growing like crazy here, and we're eat the beans. But I want to ask them where they got those seeds, where it came from. Did that come from the place I was born, which would be interesting. It probably did. And so that's the kind of thing you might want to track back for it because something was bad, or you might want to track back because something was good. You just want to know, or you want to say, was this, did my food come from a good source? Okay, good, I'm happy. So that's the tracking. And then on the accounting end, then you can take all of the information and you can do either standard accounting with your debits and credits and your with balance sheets and income statements and all of the stuff that standard accounting does, or you do accounting in much more in a variety. You can do or like a social accounting. You can do an ecological accounting. There's a lot of different ways that you can take those numbers and analyze them. So that's all, so you got all data, and then you can use it and look at it and analyze it in all different ways. Clear enough?
Yeah. Okay, so this basically, what I hear you saying is that this is how you track and this is where you track. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, I get it. So one thing Kiki and I were talking about also was, I have to open another file, but what we kind of also realized was one thing we could do is we could um, try to focus on one part of REA. And so what we were wondering was, what if we focused on, and I'll move some of these files over, but what if we focus on the observation layer? So looking at provenance and started there, and really just, because that way we don't have to get into the deeper kind of, yeah, the deeper processes maybe at first, and we can just kind of use the observation layer in HoloREA to start bringing in HoloREA layer into this. What are your thoughts, questions, concerns about that?
Well, maybe I should, I'm going to pass this to Lynn in a minute, but you can do a lot of the tracking and accounting with just the observation layer, but sometimes you want to know what this is. And then you need the resource specification, or you want to know what, who are the agents involved, and the agents are known on the observation layer, but they belong to something else. But you would, I think, at least want the resource specifications. You know, so you say, okay, this is a Granny Smith apple. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We need to know what we're identifying and what we're trading on. Yeah.
Lynn?
Oh, that seems right. Yeah, a little bit of the knowledge layer, and then the observational layer will work fine.
Got it.
I don't know. I probably missed part of the discussion that.
Oh yeah. So what we were discussing was what is the difference between first tracking and the repository. So that was the first main question, and what I'm learning is that this is where the information is kind of happening or stored, and this is how. So some kind of tracking, like using REA, functionality and other types of information. And I think the next question is could we apply the observation layer as our first kind of move into using REA, specifically HoloREA?
Sure.
Yeah, and well, so that's the question is, can we stay at that level at first, or do we need to bring in more complexity from the start?
I guess the problems you might run into, like the whole marketplace, that's on the planning layer, right? A lot of seed shares on the planning layer, any of that kind of
Okay.
offering and requesting, or planning, or any of that stuff, but mostly it'd be the marketplace stuff that you might run into.
So it might be something I found helpful about the viable systems model, and I'm trying to find the right image. I just shared one in the chat, but basically being able to think about an organization that is doing different tasks, has different projects, or multiple organizations that share certain functionalities amongst each other. And that seems like what's going on with seed share and basin, is that we'll have things that we're both doing, but then they kind of branch off into different details and different directions and applications. So it seems to make sense to start with the functionality that we're sharing, the certain things that are common in our patterns, and focusing on that, and then knowing what kind of modules will be adjacent to the seed share side and the basin side.
Is the observation, so I'm just wondering, like, what level of complexity do we need to like build a prototype, build something together? Like, so could we start with an observation layer, see how that works, and then apply other layers to it? Or should we start with all 3 or 4 layers?
I guess it depends on what you want to do first, you know.
Mm.
There's no like technical problem starting with the observation layer
Mm-hmm.
by any means. So it'd be like, what, you know, functional things do you want to make happen? Maybe it's better to think about it that way, as like, what little piece of feature do I want to make work?
Totally.
Yeah, I agree.
Real quick on this diagram, Felly, this is just 2 different systems. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with this diagram, but maybe it's a different one that I was looking at before. But the idea is we can think of, and I guess it's the recursive idea again, is we could think of Basin and SeedShare as one organization, but really there's sub-organizations that are sharing certain functionality between the 2 projects.
Right.
And I feel like those are the functionality points that we can focus on. And it might be something like the experience of a farmer offering seeds to this network, or receiving seeds from the network, and doing something similar with the biodigester. And that might be the common pattern, you know.
Well, the biodigester literally creates the water, the fertilizer water for the greenhouse. It also creates CO2 for the greenhouse. It also creates heat for the greenhouse. So the greenhouse, I think, is another shared space. Hence, on our last diagram, when we worked with Alessandro, I didn't mention a farm at first. I mentioned a greenhouse because it was the thing that connected SeedShare and us.
And the greenhouse that grows the seeds?
Right, that's the scenario. Yeah, that's the scenario. Well, it's the, yes,
okay.
Exactly. It's, and that
I think that's a good way to go about this.
Well, but I think I was just using the greenhouse because then you can bring in CO2 and you can bring in heat, and it just makes more sense.
I mean, I think if you want to, sorry, go ahead, Belly.
Well, I just want to echo, like, it's a good idea to start with this functionality and maybe a user situation like a greenhouse that's using both services, and so yeah, I'm just seconding that point, and I think a greenhouse is a good part for that.
Yeah, I agree with that approach. It'll be a good way to kind of explore this as a proof of concept as well, and just kind of like slowly build on it.
Yeah.
Okay, so what would be the functionality in the greenhouse?
Yeah, let's just start typing it out. I think it's great.
Like a user persona with the person handling the greenhouse. Yeah.
So persona, what do we call it? Greenhouse attendant? Farmer. Let's call him farmer. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna put needs. You know, they have to manage energy, water, heat, CO2, light. Well, I guess, well, yeah, just call it light.
Soil.
Soil. I'm going to call it substrate as well because sometimes you don't use soil.
Seeds.
Definitely seeds. I could have done this in a different way, but anyway, seeds. Fertilizer.
Whatever they're producing, whether it's seeds or plants or fruits.
Yeah, like you mean like the thing they're going to gather the seeds from, kind of?
Sure, yeah, we could say that this is a seed operation, and they're using fertilizer from a biodigester.
Let's just add environment, seed operation. And then what'd you say after that? Sorry.
And one of their inputs is the biodigester fertilizer.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have that here.
Is needs the inputs, Kamal?
Maybe that's a better word. Yeah. Well,
No, I'm just curious. It doesn't
maybe we
matter.
need to separate. Maybe we need to separate.
Oh, I see what's happening. Yeah. The
Well, because
greenhouse
like, they have
farmer
to
would be
manage
the,
this as much as they need as an input, right?
Yeah, there's inputs and then there's operations of what's there, and some of them are more actively inputted, so that's like a need. So
Maybe should I put it as operations, and then inputs would mirror some of that.
maybe a subset of operations could be an active input, sort of like a nested operation.
Okay. Yeah, so we could probably simplify this in some ways, but in essence, um, yeah,
operations growing food. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so that's kind of the idea is, and I can fix all this growing food. Managing, and I'm just gonna say managing all of these things.
And there's also things like scheduling, delegating tasks, making sure the tasks were completed.
Yeah. And then inputs is going to be energy, water, heat, and some of these other things we're talking about, seeds, fertilizer.
We forgot the agent as well with like time and I don't know whether that might be important.
Say that again.
Like the agent aspect of the inputs and the operations.
Can you go a little further with
Yes.
that? What do you mean?
Like,
yeah, somebody's going to have to do some work.
Yeah. Like the time and the labor put into actually process these inputs and to operate them into, creating food and waste and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, and I think what we're figuring out here is that we're trying to figure out like how we're going to be accounting for the functionality of the greenhouse and what's worth visualizing as a flow and as a point of like verification between the agents that are like managing these resources. I think it's like the events that are happening as well in between. I think this is why the canvas is really good to kind of reference. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, how do we add the farmer on this? Right now they're not on there. How do we add all these other elements, like operations? I think it seems like Holo REA is going to help with quite a bit of this, right?
Yeah, totally. It does all the operational stuff.
Yeah, it will also do, if you want to get back to what you were seeing in Hilo with the communities in a network and relationships of communities and communities within communities and all that kind of stuff. Holo REA will do all that stuff as well. Yeah, there's a very flexible organizational model and agent relationships model.
So I guess that raises a question of, do we need to just put a holo REA layer on top of this visually?
I mean, what's right there is kind of a whole REA layer. You know, it's the inputs and the outputs.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take greenhouse to be sort of like a process of growing food and seeds in a greenhouse,
So kind of all of this fits within this, is what you're saying?
I was sort of taking it that way. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not quite sure I'm not sure if Alessandro means it that way exactly, or if the greenhouse is more like an agent.
Mm-hmm.
But it's got
So
these
one
resource
idea,
Greenhouse
flows.
is
Go ahead.
a greenhouse is also a structure, a resource itself. So a lot of things going on in a greenhouse.
so one idea is to use the layers. This is like Photoshop, right, or Sketch. Using the different layers is adding and taking off the different hollow REA layers. And one layer could be the agents, where we do that circle like approach of circling who's responsible for different aspects. So in the case of greenhouse, it might be like one or more farmers, and then there would be like overlap with the transportation to for transit with people responsible for that.
Yeah, I would
And
encourage on the naming of these things to use the names that make sense to you, and then we'll figure out how those map to holo REA concepts, but that's sort of like an implementation detail. It can all be presented on a user interface in the words that make sense to you. And so I would continue to do your diagrams in that sense, and then we'll figure out how they map, how everything maps to beyond in the back end on to what's there in whole REA. It makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, so we just can use, I mean, we could also go into the document and do all this there as well. So that's that way it's more shareable. Right now, anything I do here is just taking a picture and just adding to it. And then so we could.
Have you used Miro before?
I have, yeah, we could definitely use Miro. I think that would be great. Something that we could share or,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Well,
think that'd be a good place to kind of diagram and brainstorm.
Mm-hmm, yeah. The other thing is we could use Alessandro's software that he was using. It's not as nice, but I guess it depends on what Alessandro wants to do here, but that's another option.
Do you have access to his software to create and modify kinds of
there seems to be a
diagrams?
whole sign up process, which I have not gone through yet. So yeah, we would have to figure out how to sign in and all that stuff.
I mean, like, whilst it's all messy and stuff, we could just draft it on Miro and then make it, use the software when we have kind of more of a final idea on the design direction.
Can I plug a sketch file into Miro, or what about Figma as another option?
I think Miro is more kind of like interactive, and
Okay.
the purpose is to like kind of add notes, but I don't know, it depends on like what kind of style I think would work with everyone.
Mm-hmm.
It's more accessible.
Okay. Great. So then I think I have to sign up and stuff. So I can move this over to Miro. So I'm fine with that.
Yeah, we can copy and paste this image, and then we can just kind of like, yeah, go crazy on it.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds great. So let me just make sure I hear this right. Bob, you said basically, let's just sketch out our ideas on Mira with this diagram. And then once we kind of work some things out, then we would then translate it to Holo REA or REA, and then eventually Holo REA.
Yeah, that's the way we've done things so far. You know, in other words, you just figure out what it is that how you think about it, and then Lynn is real good at mapping that, figuring out what you're thinking, and mapping that to Holo REA, and you know, I can redo that too, and possibly help. And then you got to figure out, okay, where do you start implementing things? You know, and so I want to start implementing things on the observation layer, and I don't have any, I have no hesitation of following along as you do that, and then you'll find out, oh, okay, actually need this other thing, we need this other thing, and we need this other thing, but they'll come along, you know, when you see the need, and at that point, you'll not only see the need, you'll know why you want that, what it is, it'll all make sense to you more. So as a general way to approach this stuff, that all seems good to me. What do you think?
Boy, you got to click the right thing here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it does. I think as I'm looking at the greenhouse thing, and I like doing the greenhouse a lot personally, but it occurs to me that the greenhouse isn't probably part of operations, isn't part of seed share, and the greenhouse operations probably isn't part of basin. So I don't, you know, it'd be good to do something that will lead to some code that will help y'all. But I don't know. I'm also totally fine with doing whatever you want.
This is, yeah, the greenhouse is a customer of the digester.
Yep. And it's probably a supplier of seed share.
Right.
So I see
Yeah.
where you're going. It's like it's the connecting link. Yeah.
Yeah, we could find someone who'd be interested in being, well, the customer to kind of give their insight on their needs and what they need, and what kind of solutions that they'd need, what kind of solutions they'd need solving with what we have here with this framework. And yeah, I think basically providing a platform that enables this like circular economy of food and the food system, and kind of focusing our approach on that with the potential users.
I mean, it might be that doing the greenhouse would also give you something that that basin, you know, that the digester itself, that operation could use. I don't know. It depends on how kind of general purpose the software is.
Right. Well, what about the exchange between, like, what about these lines here? Like even provenance layer, could the provenance layer be the connector of all this? Sorry, the
That's interesting. Yeah. And you know, a
Yeah,
lot
that's
of
the
what
other way to.
Sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that that's the other way to approach this is looking at it more from the operations and governance from like from basin and from seed share side, and looking at what overlaps are there. And it'll take a little more thought, because then we'll have to put into place what kind of governance systems we're working with and seeing what's overlapping. But logistics seems like one point.
Right.
Yeah, and so I just wanted to say, does this idea of a viable systems model where there's a subsystem, or there are two subsystems, basin and seed share, and then they share some sort of circle between them, and then there's other circle of subsystems that they consist of. Is that clear and resonating with people?
Yeah, it's like seed share and basin are like the management layer of all these operations that are taking place by these agents that are using the resources that are like seeds, the digesters. Maybe it would be better to kind of quickly draw that out. I don't know, but you have the control layer, which would be the app, the seed share and basin, and then you have the operations, which would be the agents that are actually swapping the resources or exchanging them. Does that make sense?
Uh, Not quite. Do you mean like there'd be lines connected to the agents?
Yeah, like if you look at, if you go to the right a little bit, I think, you know, where you have the seed guardians, local community. So you have the seed guardians that at the bottom, just kind of swapping the seeds with each other. Those are the people that are involved in the systems one with the operations kind of layer, and they're the ones basically doing the seed swapping. And then above that, you have the management layer, which would be the seed share, the app that kind of serves that layer to kind of coordinate the agents and the resources that they are sharing. Because if you think about it, if you think about these systems in terms of layers, that they each have their own functionality and each kind of like helping these different layers do its thing correctly. So yeah, if you kind of, I don't know if that's what you kind of meant, Phi, with like all the recursive layers all each having their own kind of roles and figuring out where basin and seed share, like where the technical solutions kind of come in this layer. Is that what you meant?
Yeah, definitely. And it's a little bit more difficult to picture because the user experience is us, operating it. It's not like a situation out in the world. That's going to be like our feedback loop where we know how to direct it, but we can't just assume one farmer that is going to be involved with both networks, but we can assume that our networks are going to be overlapping in how we are functioning. So
I see what you're saying,
that's a better.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So you're talking about like the software, the overlaps on the software and kind of managing things across how the software apps interact?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, gotcha.
And some question that occurred to me, and I think Lynn was posing it earlier, was where are we operating from? Because we could think of a prototype in Seattle or Wisconsin, but if seed share is in England, then it's kind of like we're not getting seeds from England probably. So just throwing that out there as a thing we got to.
But I think what we're trying to do here is kind of beyond basin and seed share. I think it's the whole kind of HoloFood and HoloAg model that can be applied not just to England and Seattle, but everywhere.
I think that's what's happening, is that we're talking about seeing the whole system, and then eventually we dive in, right? But right now it's just how do we understand the system or the network? I can even say it that way.
Yeah, so maybe we're thinking about sort of almost an analytical layer, kind of like what we see there, it's like how do we think about circular economies with all these very specific pieces?
Exactly it.
So Kamal, do you think of basin as providing some of that sort of, like I've kind of gotten hints from you, and Kiki was sort of just talking about that too, like you guys are maintaining an overview of this whole set of, this whole circular economy, or, connecting circular economies.
I think what I'm talking about right now is HoloFood or HoloAg or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's the wider network, right? But then Basin will kind of zoom in on digesters or whatever at some.
Okay.
But I think what we're getting at is this is HoloFood. It's the networks within networks. That other drawing that you did with all of the, it's
yeah.
This and this whole thing is HoloFood, right?
Yep.
And I think
And probably a bunch of other stuff too, but yeah.
right, exactly. But my whole inspiration for getting into biodigesters wasn't necessarily just biodigesters, it was the system. It was the
Yeah.
bioeconomy, specifically a circular regenerative bioeconomy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't necessarily think, I didn't want Basin to be able to do all of that. Basin was just going to help digesters and figure that out. But in the end, what we really need is a wider system that interconnects all the agents together. And that's why I keep going back to the observation layer, because
Mm-hmm.
it is that layer, right?
Yeah, it's the where the rubber meets the road, definitely. You know,
Right.
it's where things actually get connected up
And that's I
into
think,
value flows.
right. That's I think why I've been focusing so much on provenance, because it seems to be the connective tissue with this whole thing.
Yeah, I don't like, I don't want to, I feel like I broke apart this greenhouse thing, and I don't necessarily want to do that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It was just more like double checking where we would end up with on software, and maybe the software is less, well, I don't know.
Is less what? What were you going to say there?
I was going to say less operational, but that's not actually true. So
Maybe it's less operational at start. Maybe it's, well, maybe it is, I guess maybe it's, um, I don't know enough about the living viable models, viable model, viable system model. So I can't say. I can't
I'd
really.
have to get my head back into that too. It's
Yeah,
been a long time.
I think I have a little still. I think this added a little more confusion, but um, yeah, I need some help thinking through this.
I mean, I can see how that kind of applies, like just kind of intuitively when it comes to the smaller units of the systems. Like you have the larger like control unit. I mean, the viable systems model is kind of modeled, inspired by the central nervous system, because you have the brain that controls the centralizing of all the different um, distributed nerves, like nerve cells, or you have all these like distributed nerves that kind of, you know, point out into like your fingers and your limbs and all that, and they're all kind of like kind of distributed outwards, and then you have the brain that's kind of sensing and you know, doing feedback with all these like things that are sensing the environment. So when I look at the operations, I see that as Bayesian and seed share. They are the different operations, but with if you look at this viable systems model, the operation that you have here would be, for example, maybe Bayesian, just Bayesian, and then the management would be, and the coordination would be the HoloFood that coordinates, or the HoloAg system model that kind of coordinates all these mini operations that are taking place. And the environment is literally the environment that Bayesian and Seacher are interacting in, whether that's in England or whether that's in Seattle or, you know, Australia. You have all these different environments that that shape the operations and that shape the behavior of these communities that are swapping seeds or sharing fertilizers.
So is this a way to do this where the environment would be, let's say Seattle, the larger system here would be HoloAg?
Yeah.
And then
Or like culture, the environment could be like culture, like climate or country. Yeah, Seattle, like what makes the environment.
Maybe it's bioeconomy or something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. I'm just gonna do regen bioeconomy. So okay, so this is like the environment, and then now would Basin be one of these, and the other one would be seed share?
That's if the bioeconomy has Bayesian and seed share, I think. Yeah, like in a scenario where if it was maybe Seattle, but
yeah, because I mean, you know, we have greenhouses and we have seed share going on in
yeah,
this area, so
exactly.
whatever we would of course want
Mhm.
that.
Yeah. And it says here that system 1 interfaces with the operation and the environment. So I'm not sure what that could be yet, but I see that coordinate system 2 could be to do with Bayesian and seed chair and the governance of these.
Could it be something like observation? Could we get into this?
Oh yeah, because you're observing it against the environment. You're observing it against like what's going on around around like Seattle, or what's going on around like what sort of flows are being traded
Right.
and shared. Yeah.
Right.
What values being swapped like in the region.
And so would we say that all of this is the observation layer in essence? And then we get into, planning.
Yes, yeah.
Would this, yeah, so I'm just seeing how can we apply REA to even this? And the other question is, where does the agent sit? Is this the agent here?
I think the agent would be handling the operations and the management. It depends, because it's not just humans. I mean, it's also to do with the technology and the processes. It's like, yeah, it's to do with feedback loops when it comes to the viable systems model. And yeah, I think I'll have to dig deeper into that, because I think that there are links here, but I don't think that the viable systems model can give us all the answers to help understand the HoloFood framework, but I feel like it can give us some of the answers.
I could say one thing where there's an overlap between the viable systems model and value flows, the vocabulary. And as we have adopted the set of conversations from the viable systems model. And so there's conversations for action, there's conversations for feasibility, there's a bunch of different conversations. So this would also bring in that whole solo aspect where the agents are communicating with each other and having conversation about what's going on and what's being planned, conversations about how is this going, and also conversations about coordinating the activities between the various nodes. So all those things are that brings in that whole social layer in. Okay.
Bob,
I see.
I have a question. Is this where the agents would, like, I'm talking about Alice, Bob, and Carol and the greenhouse. Is this where they're sitting?
I don't, Fairly could probably understand. I haven't gone deep enough into the viable systems model and diagrams and stuff like that. We had a long conversation with some people that were working with it once upon a time. So I took some things from that and added them to value flows, and but that's around the conversations, the interactions of the agents and the various nodes. And so, but I can't tell you in terms of the viable systems model diagram. Sorry.
I think the agents do sit in the environment because they are what shape the identity of the community or the organization. So yeah.
Yeah, that could be. I'm looking at just the picture here, and without knowing enough about it, it looks like policy is the knowledge layer, planning is the planning layer, and this whole control operations observation piece is the observation layer. And if the agents sit in environment, then the whole thing kind of structures relatively cleanly.
So the way I see it is it's this is a layout for how the different parts of the governance are functioning and working together. And the advantage of using this kind of framework is what Bob was saying, is allowing for people to be on the ground observing and doing a lot of the necessary actions to respond to what's going on. And so I feel like all the layers of HoloREA are on all these layers, including agents. So there's agents in the operations, agents in the management, agents in the environment, agents in the control, the planning, the policy. And the idea is it's the glue that keeps them all together, in the sense that you can do a lot just by responding to your present situations in terms of the operations, but there's still a level that there needs to be cohesion to make sure the whole ship is going in the same direction strategically for these larger trends, like macroeconomic trends or policy trends. And that is, that's the way I see it. It's a way of organizing to maximize self-organization, but making sure that there's a layer that's holding it all together. So similar to what Kiki was saying, that it's like a body with the head and so on, but it's even stranger than that. That it's a bunch of bodies, that become a larger body, but not in the way that we think about it. It's very agent centric in the sense that it's not like there's one. We're looking at a bunch of cells that maximize their own functions rather than having a brain cell or a brain that has to process the whole thing. The brain is just more like a metacognition, or a way of looking at the whole thing and making sure that the pieces are working together. So in some sense, it brings that question of, so value flows can be used for different types of businesses. It could be very traditional, or it could be more, cooperative. And this is sort of the language that says push it more in the direction of self-organizing, but make sure it's still viable in the real world, in the sense that it's not going to make bad business choices that compromises its existence, and so on. So kind of a rant, but
yeah, no, I agree. It's like the sensing and giving feedback, and it's like the collective intelligence of all these different communities that are connected and interacting with one another.
Yeah, I'm just being super trying to like figure out where pieces fit. So I'm seeing this as the planning layer. Is this the knowledge as well, you feel?
Well, policy kind of goes in the knowledge layer. But we'd have to probably dig in and dissect it a little more.
Yeah, I see it as
to kind of,
layers.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Kiki, just really quickly. I see that knowledge is everywhere, planning is everywhere, agents are everywhere. It's not like sections, but we're looking at like a 5-dimensional thing. And it might even be 5-dimensional times 2, in the sense that Basin has one, and then Seacher has one. So it might be an array, of 5x2, which, we can't visualize, but we can sort of,
well, if in this case,
start to talk about.
I think an important graphic that we need to bring in here, make sure that we're using, and Taryn, hello. I think this is in the end what the structure I'm using is this one. We're talking about HoloFood or HoloAg, and then Basin and Seachair and Shiro. So does that? Yeah, that's how I'm seeing.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, that's the fractal nature of these recursive systems that all kind of like fragment into these different little units that all kind of plug into different kinds of operations. And then you have the connective layer that connects all these different units and makes sure that they're all kind of operating correctly. And then you have the network, the main control unit. But then I think that the networks, that huge arch, might just be the final layer that kind of identifies for these different smaller units. Because if you think of it as like a circle is one community, like one big circle, which is the whole, and then you have the parts inside the circle that are that make up the whole, and the whole is the identity of the organization and the environment.
Mm-hmm. Right. So this is a community. Let's say this is, so then, well, you could do it two ways. You could do, this is the community and these are the agents within it, or you can say this is the network and then these are the communities. Sorry. I really need to change this file. And then these are the communities. And the agents would just live within it, sort of. Well, I guess you could say community and agents, you know?
When you say agents in that context, you mean people?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Right. Yes. Well, I think you can also mean, yeah, I don't know where greenhouses fit in just yet.
Because I think we would see communities if they have enough governance associated with them or enough identity as also agents, you know, just group agents.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. Right. So.
But I don't care. I just wanted to know what you meant. That's all.
Yeah. And I'm constantly going back to agent, and I think agent also could be a group agent, like a greenhouse or a business.
I mean, part of the trouble is that HoloChain uses agent as being a person, but not even a person. It's like a person's device, you know?
Right. Well, but that works with the group agent concept, right? As long as.
Yeah, we just have to add it on top, you know, like people should be able to belong to groups or interact with them in different ways, or, you know, there could be all kinds of relationships between all of them, you know.
Right.
Okay, so I thought of something that might resonate with this fractal approach and the diagram with from Taryn. Is that we have this sort of large framework for the HoloAg, and then we zoom in, say we do a fractal kind of situation where we zoom in on operation, and then you see this chart again, but it's Basin's version or Basin's subsection. And then, so you see what I'm saying? It's like you know, those fractal zooms, you're going, you know, zooming in. We start, this will be like a large framework. And then if you zoom in on operation, you'll see like Basin, or if you zoom on the other operation, you'll see C-chair. And there's a specific environment for that. And there's a specific management for that. There's a specific policy and planning and control.
Well, and that's how Hilo works too, right? In essence.
Yeah, so that might be one way to connect these two ideas, then, that chart with this chart.
So
are you talking about a UI, Philly?
No, it's just in terms of our conceptualization of the
governance. Okay. Oh, okay.
That would be a cool.
I don't know. I thought it sounded pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've just sort of seen this as like a way of visualizing, like a mental model for us to, because I think my multi-dimensional array kind of was confusing. But if we think of like, if we're using this, can't see me pointing, but I'm pointing at the HoloAg Basin C-chair. You know what? The idea is like it's the same picture on the left, but then if you zoom in on one of the subsections of it, you'll see the same picture, but at different specifications for that context. And so to think about governance, we would think on the HoloAg layer, the level of policy and environment is going to be more general and have to do with larger trends relating to like maybe federal policy in the US, for instance, and you know, things like that. And then if you zoom in on Basin, it would be like specific things to the environment, would be the biodigester, farmers, and so on. And if you zoom in on C-chair, the environment would be in the operations, I mean, would be related to the seed hubs and the growing greenhouses. But then if you zoom out again, you'll see that there's an interaction between the seed share and basin layer on another layer of operations and management to make sure that things are healthy and coordinating and that people are getting support where they need and so on. So that's the mental model I'm working with.
Can we even maybe go in a little further and say in this layer altogether, this is the Alessandro's layer, right? Diagram, like this is kind of the whole shebang, or even if we say the observation layer, right? So it's very informal. It's just kind of tracking the whole thing. But then this, once we start getting into this stuff, we start getting into the more like, you know, the REA layers, right? More of the REA layers. It's more customized, basically. Does that make, that's probably not a good way of saying, no, I don't think that makes sense actually, but. I keep trying to bring this back to REA so we can figure out, you know.
I mean, REA works on any layer of conceptuality or any layer of granularity, you know. You could do those same thought processes on, you know, if you had, I mean, I'm trying to think of a good example. You know, if you did Seattle, you could put 10 bubbles out there and talk about food and fertilizer and whatever, you know. You know, I'm just saying it is fractal in that sense. The model works at any layer, at any granularity, and at any scoping, sort of.
Well, actually, let me just not delete what I just deleted for a second. I think what I meant also about this idea, not so much this, because REA, like you mentioned, REA is everywhere, but as a phase one, almost, what we're doing is with this gigantic graphic we're talking about is we are building the network layer here that shows basin, it shows seed share activities, it shows Shiro, and then Shiro is building their own buying club app. Like this is kind of like the fractal idea, right? Seed share is building this thing, we're building this thing, but we're feeding this bigger thing together.
Yeah, and the bigger layer is going to be what makes sure that we're all successful and cooperating where we're able to, and responding to taking advantage of larger opportunities in the general market to grow, and making sure we're moving forward together. At the same time, using the viable systems model to optimize for granularity and localization and distribution.
And I think what you said, Feli, about when you zoom in, so like even in this case, when I zoom into basin, I want to have a network within basin too, right? So this would actually repeat again inside. So this is a little incorrect, but it's the idea. Well, this is the one fractal. You have to zoom in to see the same pattern again in basin and the same pattern in seed share.
Yeah, definitely.
Does that make sense? Because then basically what this is the same thing as Hilo, networks within networks.
Yeah, Bob did a graphic once that might speak sort of to what you're talking about, and I don't know if I can pop out and find it easily. How do I get this to be?
And I just want to mention it's 10:20, so or it's past time, so I don't want to keep going on this. What I can do is I can replicate everything we did on Miro, and then we can share there.
Yeah, please put the link to the viable systems model diagram you're using into that chat somewhere too. Not in the chat here, but I mean back on the Holo forum.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna put this video on there as well, and hopefully the updated Miro page.
This is very good discussion, though. This stuff is becoming a lot more interesting. I can see stuff starting to gel here.
Yeah, I just the reason why I've been kind of sticking to high-low so much is because of the network community thing. It's more about the architecture than anything. It's fractal, so it makes sense with what I'm doing.
Totally
we can do that. We can do that with any number of layers and with any. I mean, we can make that way more flexible for you.
Yeah,
That's cool. I get your vision, but yeah. I'd hate to constrain us to 3 hierarchical layers.
okay.
You know, because pretty soon you've got like somebody making farm equipment. They're in a whole manufacturing thing, but they're making farm equipment for the farmer that's part of the HoloAg. It's not a hierarchy necessarily.
Interesting.
Yeah, I've heard the word mesh network being used. That you have distributed, you have hierarchical things, but they're part of a distributed network of, different directions. And
yeah,
and it's rhizomatic in the sense that you don't have a tree. You have over there would be a different shoot.
I just want to mention, yes, I agree with that. And that's kind of the whole idea of networks within networks. And this idea where when you're posting in multiple networks, right? That's the important piece of this. Let's say this is like, Bob's Trucks or something. You could connect those layers together in one thing. Because then we have to bubble up to UI layer at the same time. We have to make sure the truck thing you mentioned, or the tractors, like, yeah.
Yeah, I think for a direction for making the software could be using that viable systems picture as a framework for what one layer of that operation would look like, and have it be general enough that it could be, it could be that network layer, or it could be the basin layer, it could be the seed share layer, but it would be the same sort of patterns. It's just there would be different, I guess, permissions towards what data you see, or just the details that we'll have to hash out, but it would be a similar pattern.
Yeah, I like that vision.
Any thoughts, Bob, Kiki, before we jump off?
No, I like how this is going as well, and I'd be happy to explore like more on the diagram and just kind of like take notes together. I think that would be very good, and kind of getting our ideas on there and seeing how everything links up. Yeah, I think we're just trying to make the connections now. So yeah, it's going great. Like, I'm really looking forward to seeing how this turns out.
Bob, any other thoughts?
I'm happy with where things are at, and looking forward to moving it ahead. I do would like to see, once the stuff gets put together a little bit on that one diagram, as we start implementing some of the conversations between the agents and the various nodes. I think that if you get that out there, people can start communicating about what's going on, and it would be a good start for something that be deployable early on.
Yeah.
Okay, we're here, you're there. Okay, let's talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just want to mention that Impact Bioenergy on Vashon Island has, I think, something like 20 farms now consuming their product. So
that's great.
We have a lot of playground, and we also have 5 systems in the Seattle area outside of Vashon. So we have a lot of playground. So yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, totally cool. And you know a bunch of people involved in other pieces of that ecosystem too, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's just so much stuff. But I think this is such an important layer because it's the architecture, you know. So really excited to be working on this with you guys. And I love the fractal nature of it. I mean, it's it's a dream to be working on this stuff.
Fun stuff.
Great. Okay, well, thank you everybody. I'll end the recording and I will send this off. And I'm gonna actually send it in our smaller chat just because it's who I kind of want to just focus on right now, and then we'll bring it to a wider group when it needs to be, if that's cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you.
Okay.
Right.
See you.
Thanks everybody.
Bye. Take care.
Bye-bye.